right, Sarah. Great to have you here. Thank you for coming all the way over.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. How have you been? How's 2020 off to for you?
2020 is look, I hate to use the B word, but it's full. Life is pleasantly full at the moment.
Yeah, juggling motherhood,
Yes.
loverhood,
Yes.
work.
Yes. All of the things. We actually just got married at the end of last year on the summer solstice. Yeah, so I was just listening to your podcast with Amanda about flow, and I was like, lucky you didn't do it on the summer solstice because she had to attend our wedding.
Yeah, of course. And Valentine's Day today, do you get into that whole thing?
I don't get into that whole thing.
We don't either.
Not at all. I'm actually having a bunch of my nieces and nephews over for a sleepover tonight.
Beautiful.
So that's probably the most romantic thing that will be happening for us tonight.
I'm going to Tool tonight. Do you know Tool, the
Yes.
band? Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Jo's giving me shit about it. She doesn't like Tool at all.
No.
It's very nostalgic for me.
Yes.
It's rare that they tour, and I'm going with my brother. And
sort of a rocky,
Oh, yeah.
I can't really think of any of their music, but I can sort of picture the words Tool, and I think my brother's getting into them. And
it's a pretty unique sound.
Yeah.
But they're a very talented band. It's become almost like psychedelic rock. It's not psychedelic rock, but the way they weave in their music, their lyrics with, do you know Alex Gray, the artist? He does like visionary art. It's quite incredible. It's unmistakable.
Amazing.
And it's very visionary, spiritual art. And with their music, they weave it in with that art, and it's quite a trippy experience.
Awesome.
It's really incredible. So that's going to be my Valentine's
That's going to be your
Day
romantic
night.
evening.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But, I mean, it is an interesting day for a lot of people, you know, kind of craving that romance and that validation and whatnot. But I mean, just it's a shit show, I think.
It's a cliche, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and I was just saying to my sister-in-law, because she reminded me that it was Valentine's Day. My son's middle name is Valentino. Yeah. So she was like, it's sort of your namesake day
beautiful.
today. And he's actually named after Valentino Rossi, so nothing to do with Valentine. But, you know, we were saying that I suppose it's something that really mattered to us when we were younger, you know, and I think what that potentially represents is, I suppose, the need for validation, for ego validation outside of yourself. And I suppose, you know, certainly for me personally in my teenage years and even into my early sort of 20s, you know, I really needed that. And I needed that expression of love in that really cheesy and cliched romantic sense, you know, and that was what was ultimately representative of love, whereas now it's like a card and a bunch of red roses. Yeah. No, that's not going to cut it, you know. So I think it's being disinterested in what Valentine's Day means externally, I would say, and sort of commercially represents, I suppose, a deeper understanding of what we need in terms of love for ourselves and others. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Totally. Beautifully articulated. And I remember that feeling as well, even in primary school. I remember even in primary school, what would they do? What would we do? You'd put like a basket type thing on the back of the chairs, and people would give out Valentine's cards to people or not. And there would always be the few people that would have shitloads of Valentine's cards and whatever. And the rest, none.
That's a terrible thing that school did.
It was so shit every year, you know. So that conditioning of I'm loved, I'm not.
And popularity and isn't it? It's saddening, really.
Yeah. That in combination with the award systems and all the it's pretty crazy.
It's really crazy.
It's an interesting polarity to now. I don't know what you're observing as a parent as well, of now I think to try to patch up that, a lot of kind of go on the other extreme of like everyone's a winner, everyone's super special, which is good. But it can be that kind of safetyism, that wrapping up in a cotton wool, and then people are freaked out when they get into the real world.
Yes.
That you can be not number one and not considered special. So it's quite an interesting balance, it seems, that we're trying to find collectively.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we've gone too far the other way, and my son is just starting his schooling journey, so I suppose it will be an interesting sort of observational experience to see where they are at the moment. And I know I have friends with older kids that are telling me, there's no first prize anymore, and every single kid gets a ribbon that has participated in the race. And, like you just said, that's actually not life. If you go for a job interview and you don't get the job, no one's going to, I suppose maybe they might give you feedback, but oftentimes they don't, and no one's going to pat you on the back and make you feel better about that. That's the reality of that life circumstance and so many others. So I think we need to build resilience with our children, and sort of having this idealistic view that everyone is equal and every experience will be positive is unbalanced.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to observe as our kids grow up. Soleil is also year one, and just observing it does seem there is that collective observation of that we took it too far into the everyone's a winner type mentality.
Yes.
So probably finding that middle ground. Who knows? It's an interesting time.
Yeah. I suppose your experience will be different because you're homeschooling, which I'm incredibly envious of in a way.
Yeah. We're constantly weighing it up, and it's a constant balancing act between our work and trying to be good teachers and trying to be good parents, and drawing those healthy boundaries of when to be in teacher mode, when to be in parent mode. And then my challenge is I fall into the kind of friend mode more easily, and just being a kind of people pleaser by default, and wanting to just be like the friend. And I got to work on, no, you're in the teacher mode now, and it is challenging for sure. Jo's a natural; she's a great teacher. I can imagine. A bit of tough love, and knows how to. She's a great homeschool teacher. For me, I'm the adventure one and like the play one, and I got to work on having a bit more of that kind of teacher mode.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that, because I suppose there are roles that you play as parents, and I suppose when you're homeschooling, you have another hat that you need to wear, and the way you communicate in that role is important in terms of the child being able to receive that communication. Yeah, I never thought about that. Even more admiration for you guys.
Right. Well, thank you. We've met up with a few families that are doing the unschooling approach. Have you heard much about that?
Yeah, I haven't heard much, but I've definitely heard about it.
Yeah, some of these kids, they've been doing it for years. They're into late primary school or early high school, some of them, and they're beautiful kids. And we haven't quite taken it to that degree, but we're curious because we're already seeing because we're incorporating the typical kind of curriculum in the homeschool situation. And we're seeing that there's a lot of room potentially for that unschooling and making it much more natural and fun and organic. And we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll keep
amazing.
weighing it up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But let's jump into the fertility topic, because I know that's a big part of your jam, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally
Where
my passion.
are you finding your passion, for one, in that field? Any common confusions or very common challenges for women in the fertility game, you could say? What are your current observations?
Yeah, great question. I suppose the way I've been thinking about this, so I suppose my predominant passion is women's fertility. But really, when I'm working with women, I'm working across all of the different phases of their hormones or their hormonal life. And so I sort of see 3 different sections of females, and it really does correspond with the sort of 3 primary hormonal phases of life from adolescence through to menopause and beyond. So, initially it's the young girls that have hormonal imbalances and maybe no periods and things like that. So that's the first sign of imbalance in a woman is some sort of hormonal imbalance. So I'm seeing them if they, have amenorrhea, which is an absence of periods, or they have PCOS, or they have some other hormonal imbalance at that age. And then if they're not tapping it on the head there, which many women aren't.
So what would, just to stop you there for a bit, what would be feedback in one's body if they're getting those imbalances at that young age?
So it's so common.
Right.
So basically PMS, so cramping, pain, irritability, acne, moodiness, and obviously that's been normalised.
Right.
Like everybody thinks that those symptoms are normal now, heavy bleeding, and then, like I said, an absence of period. With PCOS you can get things like weight gain, unexplained weight gain, hair growth on the face, and sort of that male androgenic hormonal response. Those are just some. There's lots of others, digestive issues, which can also be tied into inflammation down into the sex organs, like things like endometriosis. So these are some of the signs.
Which would
early
be
signs.
probably, I can imagine it being tricky to address and have conversation about at that age with all the shame stuff that comes into it and embarrassment and whatnot. That would be pretty common to just be embarrassed about addressing that, huh?
Well, I think it's actually probably less about shame and more about the normalization.
Right.
So, what typically happens, we've pivoted a little bit, but that's totally fine because this is so relevant. What typically happens is, and this ties into fertility, is that if there's any dysfunction that just looks uncomfortable for, say, your daughter, then the mother will typically, obviously this won't happen to your daughters, but the mother will typically take the daughter to the doctor. And the doctor will say, I know what we should do.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the contraceptive pill.
Right.
So that sort of transitions us into, and the mother was probably on the pill, so it seems like that, again, there's a normalization of that, and that does so-called normalize the cycle. It
Gets rid of the acne and all of a sudden the weight can,
Yeah, and it gives you a normal cycle,
right?
Allegedly,
Okay.
but it's actually suppressing all of your natural hormonal cycles. So it's just putting a massive Band-Aid on that problem. So then if we move into the second phase of clients that I see, it's women in their usually late 20s, if I'm being generous, but usually in their 30s, that have come off the contraceptive pill and think that the moment that they have sex with their husband or partner that they're going to fall pregnant, because obviously they've been so afraid since they did sex education that if sperm even touches their leg, they might get pregnant. And then they don't fall pregnant, and maybe they don't fall pregnant for years and years because they went on the pill 15 years ago and didn't address any of the underlying root causes of those hormonal imbalances. So, and then if they don't do either of those things and sort of just ignore those symptoms, then they transition into menopause with probably the most painful and, I don't know, physically, mentally and spiritually challenging experience So because I think there's something about menopause that is really challenging for women, probably to do with the patriarchy and to do with that, an aging woman and an infertile woman by default of their age is a redundant woman. But there's obviously all the horrendous symptoms that come with that, like hot flushes and vaginal dryness and horrendous mood swings and weight gain and lots and lots of things like that. So they're sort of the 3 phases of women's health and particularly hormonal health and fertility that I'm dealing with every single day. So I usually in terms of the trends. I look at my clients and I see which of those categories they fit into, and then, you know, what I need to do to nurture that phase. And I suppose some of those principles that I use are common across all of those three phases. But I suppose the fertility one is the most rewarding. And I think it's because it's so magical and beautiful when somebody who has been told that they can't create a life has the opportunity to create that life and experience that unconditional love and absolute surges of oxytocin and all of those beautiful things that come with being a parent, particularly being a mother, I suppose, just because that's what I'm dealing with, the mums.
Yeah. It's massive, and it's a total detour from that, but I think it's worth addressing as well. And I don't think I've talked about it before, and it seems really appropriate. I know some blokes that are seemingly very woke, quote unquote, and really sensitive and aware and tuned in, yet when it comes to menstrual blood, they freak the fuck out.
Yes.
Freak the fuck out. And
yes.
I can think of at least a few people. And if you're listening, I love you, bros. I really do. But we got to get over this shit because it's crazy. And I'm sure it's all, who knows? I can't identify where it would come from.
It comes from the same stuff.
Right.
It's the... You know, I mean, I suppose people would have different theories about, you know, the suppression of women and that power, but, you know, it is that patriarchal model, I think, of, and I suppose, you know, women have historically congregated together separate from the remainder of the tribe during that menstrual period, and that has been for reasons of sort of spiritual reasons, for want of a better word, you know, and to, I think, you know, if we think about honouring the phases of our cycle now, we do want to retreat inward while we're bleeding. It is a time to rest and retreat, and typically in tribes of women they would have bled together. So maybe it's something about that, as well as I just think there is at a subconscious level some sort of revulsion around the bodily processes of women.
Do you think
you know?
even – yeah, I do, yeah. Do you think even potentially with the tribes that practice the red tent type rituals and whatnot, have you observed, or do you think there's potential for even then – the men being like, oh, that's disgusting. Get him out of here.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
we tend to romanticize like old tribal ways.
Yes.
And, you know, the native cultures and whatnot. But some pretty
maybe.
Absurd shit went down.
Yeah,
and a lot of,
exactly.
It's not all romantic and harmonious. There's some pretty brutal shit that went down. So
100%.
I wonder if there was that repulsed kind of reaction even with those tribal rituals. I don't
definitely.
know.
I think you are more than likely right, and, you know, maybe we won't ever know because some of that stuff is lost, but, you know, certainly it would have been more visible to them, you know, like there wasn't all these crazy sanitary products to just hide it all away, you know. But there's been a lot of outrage recently about period or sort of tampon and pad ads using red dyed water instead of the blue. I don't know if this probably wouldn't have been in your consciousness because this is something sort of growing up and, you know, being just a standard teenager watching all of the sort of sanitary pad and tampon ads. All of the demonstrations of how they worked, so say they used a pad, they would always pour like a blue liquid onto it because you couldn't even see a red liquid.
Right.
And so some companies have started to use a red liquid, and in, say, obviously the States is more conservative than we are. So in the States, people have, you know, had complete uproars about it and they've had to pull ads because people are like, we can't see that on national television during prime time.
I hadn't heard of that. That's crazy.
That's how triggered we are by a fake menstrual blood. Like we can't even see something red. Where ironically, nearly every single TV show has the most horrific violence that, people are just being killed with, absolute reality being expressed. And even, now you can watch shootings happening, being live streamed and things, and that's okay. But some red blood being poured onto a pad is not okay. It's not even blood. Wow. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
We have a long way to go. Yeah, and even my partner, I hope that he doesn't mind me sharing this. I'm sure he doesn't. Even he has that reaction. And I say to him when he has it, because I use the menstrual cups and things, so it is quite messy. And I say to him, you watched me give birth to our son, and you watched him come out of my vagina, blood and all, and he loved it, and he was there and caught him and was in awe at that moment. And I said, this is of the same thing. I don't understand.
I can relate, even though like it doesn't freak me out much. Every now and then it'll get me by surprise every now and then. Like Joe uses these those period panties or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
So you just kind of bleed into the panties. And
yeah.
It's almost like a wetsuit material. And every now and then she'll just kind of leave that in the shower. Maybe she's busy with the baby or something like that, hasn't washed it out, and I'll kind of stomp on this this blood-soaked pair of undies, and it'll make me jump for a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's out of like being repulsed. It's like just unexpected. This pillow of blood.
My partner would definitely scream if that happened to him.
But I get primal with it. Like it ever since Joe gave birth to Soleil, in which it was extremely bloody and was right there in it, literally like blood to my ankles, almost.
Wow.
Literally. It was full on. And I got so primal, like unexpectedly, cutting up that placenta a day or two later, and just getting this primal effect in me that I was not expecting. And it's really been since then where my perception and responses to that menstrual blood has shifted radically. Before that, I wasn't around it as much.
Yeah. Do you have sisters?
I got an older sister, but it wasn't around.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, not at all.
Yeah.
It just wasn't around. So I don't think I had the opportunity to be repulsed.
Yes.
For one.
Yes.
And I think consciously it was just it was a practice to appreciate it, I think. In the early days of being exposed to it. But then that birth, holy shit, it just radically changed it.
I think what the birth does, and I think that's why I remind my beautiful husband when he does get a shock, just like you, it's usually in moments where where I'm actually startling him with something to do with the blood. I think that I've actually lost my chain of thought, but I think what I was going to say is, the birthing process does create more awe for the female body, I think, in men that are lucky enough to experience it, because really everything sort of personal to do with bodily fluids and the menstrual cycle is shrouded in secrecy. So most men actually don't get an opportunity. Like you said, you didn't, I didn't share my period experience with my brothers. I've got two brothers, like uber alpha male footy loving brothers, and I don't think they would have ever known even when I got my period. It's not something that is culturally even recognised in any way, shape or form. So I think that's part of it. It's only when you watch your wife deliver a baby vaginally, and let's face it, I mean, that's something that's not even happening for many, many people.
True.
So they're not even getting that experience. They're getting the sanitized baby that comes out of the C-section cut. So we're probably moving further away.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good to bring conversation to it. because it's very new. It's very new for the dad to be allowed in the birthing room. It's
true.
very new for boys to be exposed to menstrual blood if they are ever until their teens and adult years. So no wonder why men feel like little boys when it comes to being exposed to the vagina in its fullness and birth and menstruation. No wonder. I mean, it has been under wraps and behind clinical curtains, and it's a new time for talking about it, seeing the red dye on the ad. And
exactly, I know. And talking to you is making me think, okay, I have one child. I have a little boy, Raphael, and I have an opportunity to share it with him. And talking to you has just made me realize this. I need to. I need to say I've got my period. This is what it looks like. Here's my menstrual pad. I use the cloth pads, so that he has a different experience of that growing up, because he more than likely will not have sisters. And as we've said, even if he does, he's not going to get that experience. And if, we look at modelling, if my partner Iggy is like getting a shock every once in a while, he's going to see that and model that,
right?
So I think there's an opportunity with our children to change some of that stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the old tampon?
Oh, God. So my thoughts are definitely do not use, if I'm going to the beach and I'm on day one of my bleed, which is typically heavy, then I will sometimes use a tampon instead of my moon cup. And obviously there's organic ones now and they're sort of transitioning away from some of the toxic products. But to be honest, the way that I feel intuitively about the bleed, and I suppose this is just personal, is I don't even really like to use my moon cup anymore. I prefer to let it come out as nature intended for it to come out. And I feel like having something up in there is in some way interfering with the natural gravitational flow of that blood. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. But I suppose, and I'm sure you're the same, but sometimes I feel like we all live in a little bit of a bubble because we sort of sometimes forget that not everybody knows this stuff. Like sometimes I feel like even with the fertility stuff and with the period stuff, I feel like, everybody knows this stuff. But, so many people don't know that the personal period care products that they're using are toxic. So all those pads and tampons, they've been dipped in chemicals and you're inserting those chemicals. Our blood, our skin is a main line into our bloodstream. So, obviously we don't want to be putting chemicals on our skin in the form of personal care products. But if we're sticking it right up into our vagina, that's even more sort of absorbent. So it's super problematic on a couple of levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even to the point where I know some beloved people that even get uncomfortable with the word vagina. Like they have to so they'll be talking. So if you're listening and you get uncomfortable, like with vagina being like the same volume as all the other words, because I can think of a few people that they'll be talking and then when it comes to vagina, the volume goes down a bit. Vagina. Almost like it's
a shameful
word.
So
yes. If you're listening and you're like the conversation on vagina and menstrual blood and tampon and all is either shocking or gets you uncomfortable, like
or repulsive even.
That's okay, because I think what's also going on now with this conversation, because this is becoming normalized in our scene.
Yes.
It then also, people often get shamed if they're kind of like what I almost did before with some mates that get uncomfortable with menstrual blood. It was a bit of shaming there.
Yeah.
I hope in a good way of like just bringing awareness to it.
Exactly, yeah.
But if you are uncomfortable with it, it's okay. Like breathe into it. It's all going to be all right. And it's just good to bring it into conversation. But I think that shaming thing can be done on both ends, you know? Do you agree?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's when you become more woke, for want of a better word, sometimes that just becomes another filter for judgment, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose that's a practice is not everybody is exactly where you are on the path and where they are is okay. But God, don't use tampons.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense on a practical level, like what you said with the beach. But it just, when you really tune into it, it just doesn't make sense of putting a plug in there essentially and stopping it.
Putting a plug in there. And a plug that's like doused in chemicals, you know, which are endocrine disruptors, which means that they interfere with your hormones, you know, straight into your sex organs. You know, that has to have been invented by a man.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of nourishment for fertility and everything like that, I know it's ideal to come for a session and personalize it, but just as like lifestyle tips, what are your top like staples of a woman ensuring their body is being nourished for that optimum fertility?
Yeah. So this is if we're going to talk nutrition, and then maybe we can talk about a few of the things that are as important, like sleep and stress particularly. But I feel like my opinion or my practice around nutrition for my clients is quite different to a lot of others. And I suppose it's based on some work done by a dentist called Dr. Weston A. Price. So basically he was around in the 20s and 30s, and he actually wrote this amazing book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And it's amazing. You have to read it. And you wouldn't just read it like go to bed every night. Weston, so O-N-A Price. Everybody can write this down. Yeah. And the book is a mouthful, but if you Google that, you'll find the book. It's called Nutrition. And it's been in print for this whole time. I think it was published in the 30s, early 30s, and it's never gone out of publication.
Great.
But it's little known. So basically he conducted the largest observational study of the effect of nutrition on health, I suppose, and he travelled to 22 countries across the globe, and in every single one of those countries he found a tribe that was living completely as they had been for centuries, I suppose, or longer. So he, you know, obviously we couldn't do that now because now, you know, we have nearly every single tribe has had exposure to westernization and they're not living in their natural environments really at all anymore. So he travelled far and wide. So he did visit some Aboriginal tribes here in Australia, Maori tribes, Polynesian islanders. He went to the Maasai in Africa and other African tribes. He went to a small Swiss dairy sort of village in the Swiss Alps, a Gaelic fishing village, the Inuit in sort of Alaska, some American Indian tribes. So he, like I said, 22 different tribes, and their diets were really, really varied, as you can imagine. They really were. Like the Swiss villagers were living on milk and butter and things like that. The Maasai were living on cow's blood and raw milk. The Gaelic fishing village was stuffing fish heads with oats and livers, and there was obviously just a really wide and diverse range of foods that they were eating, but there were some consistent themes across all of those diets, and those foods were fed specifically to any couples that were sort of married ceremoniously or any women that were coming into their fertile years, and then to those women when they were pregnant, and then to them when they were feeding, and also included in the diets of their young children. As a side note, he was really, and I'll come back to what those foods are in a minute, but this feels relevant, he was really interested in craniofacial structure. So he was a dentist, and what sort of prompted him to go on this journey of discovery was that he noticed that in the UK, where he was from, that all the kids had they had really crooked teeth and heaps of cavities, but they had like really narrow faces, which caused sinus issues, like I said, dental issues, breathing issues, allergies, all of these things. And he said, this doesn't, to me, feel intuitively like a representation of true health. Like all these kids, they're so sick and they were miserable and all of these things. So he was on the hunt for the perfect diet, and he was actually a vegetarian when he went, and he was like, for sure, I'm going to find this vegetarian tribe that's just living out there in pure bliss and abundance. And he found something very different to that, and he documented it all in that book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. So when he looked at all of these tribes, what he was really looking at was the craniofacial structure. So he was looking at the wideness of their arches. There's like a phenomenon called the rule of thirds. So the three different sort of sections of the face need to be equal, symmetry, which we've all sort of heard about in terms of attractiveness, and then straight and cavity-free teeth. And all of these tribes that had no exposure to any sort of modern foods, and in the 1930s that was just white flour, vegetable oil and sugar, they all had perfect teeth without any orthodontics. They had no cavities. I think he documented like 1 or 2 cavities across all of the different tribes. They were all so robustly healthy and attractive, actually, and really happy. And every single tribe that he visited, and he took photos of them, so the book's amazing. It's got all these beautiful photos of these beautiful, beautiful tribe members just smiling with their teeth and their mouth opens, just showing their beautiful, perfect faces and their beautiful teeth. He visited neighbouring tribes or tribes close by that had that exposure, usually from visitation of a missionary or something, and they had brought along those foods. Like I said, not the Franken foods that we're eating on the daily at the moment and today, but just white flour, vegetable oil, white sugar. That's it. And those tribes that had that exposure to those modern foods, within like a year or so, they were all riddled with cavities, and any children that were born were already born with crooked teeth and a degeneration in their craniofacial structure. So narrow sinuses and just a noticeable regression in physicality, immune system function, fertility, even like birth, and just general disposition. Like the babies cried more, they were way less happy. There were more complications in birth because the jaw correlates to, as you know, to the pelvis. So there was a narrowing there was a narrowing of the pelvis, all of these things. So I know, it's just amazing. And the book is really, for anyone that is interested, it's amazing.
I'm going to check that out for sure.
I feel like everybody should have this book. And he sort of said that he really felt like we were degenerating as a species. And I mean, it's scary because, like I said, those foods were nothing in comparison to, like, there was no GMOs and like toxic oils and all of the things, you know, it's just unbelievable. And I mean, if I think about, because I think about his work as the most influential in terms of what I do with women around fertility, then it's absolutely no wonder that we have a fertility crisis at the moment. So the foods that he observed in all of these beautiful, healthy, robust and fertile tribes was predominantly organ meats. So they all found liver where they could. They always chose the liver out of the animal over everything else, the muscle meats, everything else, and they fed that to their preconceptive people. So organ meats, raw dairy, seafood, they were pretty much the top. Fish eggs, which is also seafood, I suppose. So oysters, like all of the shellfish, everything like that predominantly, and fish eggs, and then maybe eggs was in there as well. So, and the reason that the reason that he deduced, and I think, you know, science has proven him to be right, that these foods were the most important foods, and particularly liver, is because it has high concentrations of what he called the fat-soluble nutrients, so vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K2. And they hadn't discovered the vitamin called vitamin K2 yet, which plays an important role in bone health and also in craniofacial structure and the health of our teeth. He called it activator X, and he didn't know what it was, but he knew it was present in all of these foods. Like the Swiss villagers had this butter that they ate, and it was sacred, and that was really high in the fat-soluble vitamins because the cows would eat it during spring, and then their milk would be converted into it. So it would, if that makes sense. Yeah. So he called it activator X. He wasn't sure what it was, and then later they isolated that nutrient and found that it was vitamin K2. So I suppose from a nutrient perspective, I'm always asking my female clients if they're interested in fertility, are you going to eat some organ meats for me?
Yeah.
And they usually say, no way, Jose.
Right. And what about vegans?
Yes.
So that's all off the list, isn't it?
Yeah.
So have you come across that?
Yes.
Well, of course you have. And what's your recommendation for someone that just won't go near it, even if they've tried all the healthy vegan options?
Yeah. So to circle back to Weston Price in the context of this question, so like I said, he was vegetarian. He was definitely hoping, like he had some bias, some sort of scientific user bias when he went on his 22-country journey, and he was proven very wrong, and he was, enough of a real scientist to actually just share the data that he discovered, and we're so fortunate to have that data. But he observed that there was no vegan tribes anywhere in nature. There was not a single tribe that didn't use animal foods and products in some way, shape or form because of the nutrient density present in them. And then he did find one or two vegetarian tribes, and what he observed was that those vegetarian tribes were less healthy than their neighbouring omnivorous tribes, quite noticeably. So I'm not making a judgment call, and my sister, for instance, is a Gen Z, and she's very much leaning into, she's vegetarian and leaning into veganism, and that's ethical for her. So I know that this is a choice that people make, but I suppose my conversation would start if someone was vegan and they were willing to listen to my voice, and there's lots of other voices that would maybe say that a vegan diet's perfect for fertility, would be, know that. And I think what I love about fertility with my clients is that when you start thinking about conceiving and when you do conceive, it's bigger than you. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just about you anymore. Maybe you need to put the ethics aside, because you need to think about the human being that is growing inside of you, and that's motherhood, right? That's parenthood. So, and then to come back, most of my female clients that are interested in conceiving do not want to eat liver, and there's dehydrated beef liver supplements that they can take. And then, if you're a vegan, you can eat raw butter. There are sources that you can find, and even at a push, butter and organic, of course, and ghee. And eggs from happy chickens, there are things that you can do. And butter and eggs are superfoods, and they do contain those fat-soluble vitamins. It's not perfect. It's maybe not enough, but that would be where I would start with people with no judgment. For me, there's no judgment, but there is some facts there about our sort of evolutionary history, and I think that those facts need to be paid attention to. And I would sort of ask anyone to really, really try and sit with their inner voice and their inner being and really try and listen and put any dogma or, because I feel like sometimes veganism can be dogmatic. It's a bit like a religion. Mm-hmm. So really try and quieten the voices and ask your inner being what is going to be most life affirming.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And of course, being deep in the yoga scene, most people assume I'm a yoga teacher, I'm vegan. It's just an assumption.
It is such an assumption, isn't it?
And Joe's got a funny story.
It's not okay to eat meat if you're a yoga teacher. Do that shit in secret, man.
I know, it's so funny. Joe's got a really funny story. Funny to me anyway, because she's been vegetarian since she was a kid, like a young kid. Growing up in Kalgoorlie, there were no vegetarian options, yet she just knew, like, I don't want to eat animals. Like, that was it.
That's amazing.
And all that was available was animals and canned tuna and spam
and VB and Emu export.
So she had it in her blood from way back of being a vegetarian. But then since giving birth and breastfeeding and just being such a mama, she's had it revealed to her again and again exactly what you just said. Every like nutrition expert we've consulted with or just had chats with, they're like, you need some organ meats. You need to go straight for that juicy steak, or you need that. You just can't quite get it from the vegetarian and vegan options that you've been living off. And she really didn't want to. And really,
I can understand that.
I'm getting to the funny part of it, but this is just the build up. So she just didn't want to. And then this one day, we were at TLC, the cafe around the corner where a lot of vegans go to. Love you all if you're listening. And some people in there, a group of people asked Joe, like, how you doing? How's your day? And she's like, you know what? I'm just considering eating some meat. And she's got a very the more you get to know her, she's got a very frank, kind of candid sense of humor. And their jaws just dropped. And she kind of wanted to drop like a bomb of, you know what? I'm having a big day. I'm thinking about eating some meat. And the judge, like, you could just feel the judgment, the shock, the horror, the judgment. And you could cut it with a knife. It was thick.
Yeah.
And
get out of here, they would have said, you're not allowed here anymore.
Yeah, and I do come across that a lot. Again, being a yoga teacher and that assumption that I'm vegan and being very public of these types of conversations, and what Joe's been going through even since that, which would have been 4 years ago, of contemplating, like, I should probably have some meat. Like, I keep getting told it by the experts and I'm depleted and I'm run down and something's off. And she's still only had very little. She's having trouble with it.
Well, the problem is that, so if you don't eat protein, and particularly animal protein, then your digestive system, particularly your stomach, it actually produces hydrochloric acid and the digestive enzymes relative to how much protein it's given.
Right.
And so if you eat no protein for a long period of time, you actually don't have the acids to break it down.
I haven't heard that before.
So what happens is that people that are vegetarian or vegan for a long time, they mistake the physiology of that inability to digest it as their body's wisdom telling them that they shouldn't eat it. And what they actually need to do is supplement with digestive enzymes, because when they give their body the enzymes and the meat at the same time, then over time their body will also start to naturally upregulate those digestive enzymes, and it won't feel as hard. But because she's been vegetarian for so long, she wouldn't be producing many of those acids that she needs to break those down.
Good to know.
Yeah.
But I also understand that reaction from the vegan community, because I've been there.
Totally.
And I've been up on my high horse and judged people as well. I have been there. It's really been since stepping into my father role, like this different type of awareness has arisen, probably due to that primal shift through dealing with the blood and cutting up the placenta and seeing Joe depleted. My perception of the meat thing has changed, and through having intelligent conversations with people such as yourself and Heath Daly and people that quite a few of them went down that kind of raw path and the vegan path, but then this different kind of intelligence has emerged, it seems.
Definitely.
Where long term, the way a lot of people were doing the vegetarian and vegan thing just wasn't actually healthy. And the copious amounts of agave nectar and all of these highly processed foods. Soy.
Yes, and even like all of the legumes.
So it can be done beautifully and healthily, and some people are able to do it long term and really thrive. But I think the majority don't, which has brought a really crucial conversation to the forefront, which I'm really appreciating. And of course, we took the factory farming thing way too far. And we want to be intelligent with where we get our meat from and all of that, and connect with the farmers if we can. And all of that is great stuff. And there's a way to do it beautifully, I do think.
I think so too.
And I had resistance to it. I didn't want to entertain that conversation at all for years. And gradually I was seeing that it was too polarized, and it wasn't really healthy, wasn't really helping people. And like you said, it can be very dogmatic, a very tribal dogma if we get sucked into it, which I have been sucked into it.
Yeah, and very judgmental. Like, I feel like, everybody knows about the angry vegans. I always joke that it's the B12 deficiency making them angry. But, it's very exclusionary in its own way and can be quite judgmental, and, that sort of defeats the purpose as well.
What do you think of this new prevalent movement of the carnivore?
Oh my God.
Is that
it's the same thing. The same, let's just put them all on the table because there's a few. Keto, fasting, I think, particularly for women, or if we're thinking about fertility, if we're thinking about women during their fertile years, they need to never fast because fasting is basically just a little SMS to your body.
Yeah, Joe and I talk about that a lot because I do fast a lot.
Yeah,
I get a lot from it. Yeah.
Well, a lot of the research around fasting is mostly male subjects that are really getting all of those amazing benefits of, mitochondrial improvement and longevity and telomeres and all of those things. That's mostly male skewed. But, it's an SMS to your body, like now's not a good time to bring a baby in. It's that simple. So the fasting, the keto, which is fasting because it's like you deprive an entire macronutrient from your diet, then your body also just goes down, down regulates fertility. There's something missing here in our external environment. Now's not a good time for a baby because I'll be deficient. And carnivore's the same. Well, if you're eating a carnivore diet, I suppose, again, you're eliminating carbohydrates completely. So you're eliminating one entire macronutrient group that is required for optimal physical function. So they're all as bad as each other.
Yeah.
I suppose the only thing about the carnivore diet is that, and this is something that I see in a lot of my clients, and obviously gut health is something that just is innately important in terms of women's health and fertility, because if there's digestive issues, then it doesn't matter how many beef liver capsules you're eating, you're not really going to be absorbing all the nutrients, and the same if you are going to eat those nutrient-dense foods. Where was I? I just lost my chain of thought.
Carnivore.
Yes, carnivore. So with all, if we think about all of the fruits and vegetables, a lot of them have chemical compounds in them that make them quite hard to digest. And if we think about grains and legumes, all of them do. If we think about nuts and seeds, they all do. So, and maybe that's another reason why the vegan diet can really become problematic for people, because you're eating probably 70 or 80% of the foods that you're eating contain anti-nutrients, lectins, FODMAPs, saponins, phytates. I could go on and on. There's lots of sort of chemical compounds that those foods are innately contained to protect them against their predators that irritate our digestive system, whereas meat doesn't have that stuff. So the reason that lots of people with an autoimmune condition, like Jordan B. Peterson is one of the people.
It's made it huge.
Yeah, is because you've just taken out all of the irritating foods that
Right.
are actually causing digestive irritation and by default then body inflammation. So you could probably just take out a lot of those inflammatory foods and still keep some in and get the same net result as they're all getting just from eating meat. But meat is one of the foods that is one of the least irritating to the body.
Right. Yeah. My brother and I are trying to work out we've been trying for years. And Dad, if you're listening, we love you. And you know it. We talk to you about it anyway. But it's good to make it public as well. Because he is overweight. You know it. And we've been trying for years to find a solution, and we're thinking that potentially the carnivore thing could help in the short term because we've just, for like 2 decades, if not longer, we've tried everything. And that seems like a way to temporarily get him in that calorie deficit.
Without it being like too deprivational for him.
Yeah, he can still enjoy his meat because he's going to anyway.
Yeah.
He intentionally takes the lettuce out of a burger anyway.
Oh, God.
So it's not going to happen anyway.
Yeah, so just get rid of the bread,
and the
toxic oils
and
the mayo and stuff, and you're good to go.
So it does seem like a potential short-term solution for someone that is hooked on sugar or having those inflammatory responses. People seem to be getting some positive stuff. It'll just be interesting looking for the people that do it long term.
All of these things are not studied long term, really including veganism. We don't have the long-term studies. So we don't really know what the effects are. But, the body is pretty amazing at adapting to things. And, even with keto and with carnivore particularly, the body can convert protein into carbohydrates through a process called gluconeogenesis. So, it's not actually just going to completely deprive. The body will do what it needs to do to get what it needs to get where it can. So you could probably do that with your dad for a little while. But I wouldn't recommend that he would stay on that diet because you're not getting the full range of nutrients that you need.
But he wouldn't be anyway. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
he'd be chucking the bun with the burger.
Yeah, it's been an interesting thing. Like, because Cam's right into it, fully enthusiastic.
Yeah.
So am I. But that kind of inspiration hasn't quite rippled through. And I think a lot of people can relate to that as well. Someone you care about
100%.
just isn't changing or isn't shifting. And years ago, I came to terms with just loving on him and stopping to try to change him.
Yeah.
That was just creating a thick divide, and we weren't getting along, and it wasn't good. But a beautiful thing is just recently he has been very vulnerable and honest with wanting to lose weight, whereas prior he wasn't, and I was just coming on to him way too heavy, and it wasn't helpful. So I think a lot of people can actually relate to that, whether it's a partner, a loved one, a child, a parent.
Definitely.
How can we be a positive influence without preaching and coming on heavy? I find it challenging.
It is.
You love
it is
them,
hard.
You just want them to be
I know.
their best, and
Yeah, I think that when I started my health journey, I was definitely a preacher. Like I was just in everyone's face about it, and it landed with a lot of my friends. They really, took the stuff on board, and they do a lot of the same stuff, and they all bought Paul Chek's book and read it. Maybe I bought them some copies, but a lot of them were really interested, and they live, similar lifestyle values to us. But my family, no way, Jose. They were just, the biggest eye rolls ever. And, I was really triggered by that, and really triggered, going to my mum's house and seeing the bread and the margarine and, just seeing her drinking wine every night, and my dad as well. But I suppose over time, I get to just help the people that want to be helped. And I think that helps me scratch that itch so that now I can just be accepting of how they are. And interestingly, exactly like you, my mum has often come to me asking for advice around something, whereas I used to be like, get that bread out of here. You can't eat that. And you could see her just tense up and get defensive, you know. So I think it is about surrendering and accepting and not breathing it down people's necks. And actually a lot of people refer that after they've seen me, they refer their partner and they sort of say, oh, God, it's all the things that I've been telling him for 20 years to do and now he's doing it. It's like because you are not the one telling him. He's paying me now and it's different. It's a different dynamic. When, you know, your loved ones nag you to do something, it doesn't land very well.
And in your journey to where you're at now, have there been times where have you noticed the quest for health and having autonomy over your choices? Have you noticed that turn into a eating disorder or a pathology or something out of balance in your journey to find more balance?
Definitely. Like orthorexia. I actually have a background. So I had, I didn't have anorexia, but I definitely had body dysmorphia and I was bulimic for a while. And then I used recreational drugs to also have fun but also suppress my appetite for most of my 20s, which I like to be honest about because I feel like we're all human and that diverse and interesting and shadowy past makes me the accepting coach that I am today,
Totally.
you know, like my friends are like, oh my God, Sarah Hopkins Health and Wellbeing, if only, you know, they could have seen you back in the day. It's like, well, that's okay. Like I wasn't where I am now and it's okay for that to be my past, you know. It helps me be more compassionate, I think, and understand different perspectives. Oh, my mind has gone blank again. Where were we going? It's Valentine's Day.
We forgot to pull out the chocolates.
What were you asking me?
Eating disorder, your journey.
Yeah, so the recreational drugs were playing sort of a part in that sort of starvation strategy over time.
Like amphetamines and
amphetamines and all of those things that suppress your appetite for 3 days over the weekend. You're not eating. So I think I had a really unhealthy relationship with food and with my own reflection in the mirror. And sometimes even today obviously I see girls with eating disorders. I don't deal with anorexic women or girls because I find them very difficult to deal with and I feel like I'm not the person, but I see a lot of girls that are bulimic or have binging and purging habits. And I always say to them, I feel like the skeletons are still there. They're always going to be in the closet, but I need to manage them. And so sometimes over the years, probably the obsession with health has been, you know, I've probably taken that obsession with deprivation of food and starving myself and sort of focused it over here with health. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So I have a tendency, and I'd say a lot of people probably in the health sphere do, you know, I can have a tendency to be obsessive about something. Right. So I suppose there probably has been times where that has become orthorexic and I just now am just really conscious of, is this me, you know, upholding my health values or is this me being obsessive?
Yeah, good inquiry for sure.
Yeah, so I think for the most part it's just feeling good now, but I'm very aware that there are those little skeletons, like I said, in the background.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's great that you're honest about that and sharing it. I mean, it does make it much more accessible and relatable. It's very easy to put someone like yourself and these coaches to put them up on a pedestal as this perfection. They've got ultimate balance. They never fuck up.
Oh, gosh, that's so not true.
The pressure that people put on themselves is just unattainable. So it's very refreshing, I think, this transparency and sharing your journey. Very helpful.
You have to. And I mean, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media and I'm sort of, I don't know, leaning away from it quite a lot at the moment. But then I have moments where I feel like I should share more of the messy side of things. just for that relatability and just so that people can see that I'm not Wonder Woman. You know, I actually just shared a testimonial. This beautiful young girl just called me Wonder Woman, and I nearly deleted that sentence from the testimonial because I was like, oh, I can't publish that. But I was like, she wrote that, you know, and that's my shadow, you know, that I can't even accept that compliment. Obviously, I'm not Wonder Woman, you know, and I hope that she doesn't think that. But, you know, yeah, I think it is important that people know that we are normal, dirty, you know, moody, grungy, triggered, sometimes sort of out of alignment humans, just like all the other, you know, Homo sapiens walking around on this planet right now. Yeah. It makes us more real and more relatable. And it helps us to help other people more because we're like, oh, yeah, I've been a jerk like that before myself a million times. Yeah.
Totally. On the nutrition piece, just to dive into that a little bit more before we come full circle and wrap it up. Another trend that's still going strong is the seasonal cleanses and the detoxes, and which goes hand in hand with the fasting thing, I think. And I spoke a little bit with, Jeremy Princey, and Heath as well, and got their take on it. I'd love to get your take on the juice fasting, the seasonal cleansing, and are you for it, against it? Where are you at with it?
Yeah, at the moment, and I suppose potentially I might vacillate, and I have in the past been in a different sort of position, and I haven't listened to that episode with Jez's, but I have listened to the other one with him. He and I collaborate quite a bit together, so yeah, I definitely need to listen to that. But maybe we vacillate in terms of our opinions on this one. I think firstly, juice fasting, definitely no. And I guess my filter, again, is the women's health and fertility filter, you know. So maybe for a man who's – actually, before I say that, so the thing with fasting, and I think it applies to your juice fasting as well, which we'll just put that into that bucket, is that you have to be in an absolutely robust state of physical, mental, emotional and spiritual health to even consider doing that. And I don't know what you're seeing around you, Stu, but what I'm seeing around me is nobody that is in a position that they can add that extra stressor into what's happening with their nervous system, because when you take food away, you're signalling fight or flight. And so for the most part, I just think we're not robust enough to deal with that right now. Like most people are eating shitty food, swamping their eyes in blue light all day, running around, sitting on their ass all day in front of a massive blue light, surrounded by it, you know, just not getting adequate sleep, not having any time in the parasympathetic nervous system that's intentional, like meditation or yoga or anything like that. And then to add fasting on top of that, it's problematic. So in terms of the juice fasting, I think that it's not beneficial. And I also think, to sort of bring our previous conversation into it, I think for a lot of women, it's like a socially acceptable, I'm going to starve myself because I've gained a few kgs, you know, and I know that I was guilty of that because I have that, you know, background in eating disorders. And, you know, it was like, oh my God, I can just drink fluids. You know, when you've had those sort of anorexic tendencies, there's something really appealing about that. It's like you're sort of starving yourself and you're just drinking a bit of juice. You do lose that fluid. So you feel, so I think it's perpetuating some of that under the guise of being healthy.
Good point.
So juice fast is definitely not. Detoxes, I just think that what we would be better off doing is making small and incremental changes to what we do every day. Most people would be better off meditating for 10 minutes because, you know, let's face it, most people are not doing 10 minutes of meditation, and would be better off having like a 7 p.m. curfew on any phones and blue light emitting devices and winding down and having candlelight only. Just those two things done consistently, like even if it's just 5 days a week, is going to have a way more profound effect than every 3 or 4 months doing some radical detox where you're chugging weird herbs and pooing through the eye of a needle, you know. I feel like doing those things for some people sort of enables less than optimal behaviours for the rest of the time. Yeah, I feel like there's more important things to be done than those things.
Yeah.
So controversial opinion, I reckon.
No, not at all, but maybe to some. I think it's a really balanced, healthy view for sure, which actually is quite similar to what Jess has said.
Oh, amazing.
He's not a fan of the cleanses and whatnot either,
Yeah.
but his view has shifted, admittedly, over the years, you know?
Yeah, well, we have, sort of worked with each other and both taken that sort of health or check journey together. So we do tend to mostly have the same sort of opinions on things.
But yeah, the blue light thing, even though we're flooded with that big ass light to
That's okay because it's like midday, so it's
Yes.
the right time for the high blue.
That is a huge one though.
Yeah.
And it comes up
my gosh.
again and again and again in these episodes of what a crucial thing to implement into our lifestyle of just having that curfew and keeping, and I don't do it all the time. When
Yeah.
I'm really busy and I've been with the kids all day and juggling, I'll admit some nights I need to catch up on shit. And it's
Yeah.
on my phone, it's there.
Yeah.
But more often than not, I really do try to keep the phone out of the room unless
Yes.
it's the alarm, it's on, flight
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
And just have those boundaries. And always
Yes.
I feel better.
Oh,
Without a doubt, like night and
it's
day.
so important. I mean, that's something that I always cover in my sessions. And in terms of fertility, in IVF, they use melatonin. And it's like, if they're using melatonin in IVF, why don't we actually just help your body to actually produce melatonin? Because nobody right now, if they're just doing the normal things like screen gazing until they set their alarm on their phone, which is the last minute that blue light goes into their eyes, and sometimes even with those filters on, nobody is building adequate levels of melatonin in the 4 hours before 10 p.m. and then for those crucial first 4 hours of sleep. Those first 4 hours between 10 and 2 a.m., they're the ones that are the most important for everything, and they're the ones that nobody's getting adequate melatonin production for. But when I talk about this in my sessions, oh my God, the resistance.
Yeah. I was
The
about
resistance.
to say how addictive it is.
Oh my God, that's the thing that I think people don't do, or if they do it for a little while, and then for some reason, I even if they just wear the blue blockers from Sunset, if they want to, watch things, but just after some time, they just take them off and they don't wear them anymore.
What is it, do you think?
What is it? You know what I think it is, if I'm just thinking right now? It's that all of our screens, probably even including the TV, are activating dopamine. So we're really addicted. And I think it's just too compelling.
Yeah.
And it's so scary. And I mean, I'm sure you've spoken at length with Heath about this, but, we're going to look back on this time and go, can you believe that we were like just staring at these things? I think that it's going to be a bit like smoking.
Yeah. I think, I hope that's the case.
Oh, I hope that's the case too.
Again, through hearing conversations and observing where technology is going, it'll be either that of like shit starting to get revealed of how unhealthy it is and how much it does fuck with your sleep and all the other negative aspects of having a phone right on you or near you. Or we'll keep kind of evolving into robots. Essentially.
Well, yeah.
Which is a prevalent conversation, and with Neuralink getting developed and these things of integrating the phone like into the body.
Oh my
like,
God.
It's that conversation is happening as
I
well.
know.
The technology is getting developed with that as well. I would hope I wouldn't do that switch, but it does, like, as we're just thinking and contemplating it, like, why can't people just turn the phone off and leave it out in a different room? Why?
Yeah.
Possibly we're that hooked and
We are.
maybe even getting our circuitry ready for getting it implanted into our head. I don't know, but
Well, they say that we're basically an android already,
Yeah, exactly.
because we're like so reliant on this device
People freak out. Like I've literally seen people freak out when they've gone to like watch a sunset and they haven't got their phone to capture it. Like this anxiety, where's the phone? Like it's like the situation isn't happening without the phone. And I can observe that in a subtle way in myself.
Yeah, same.
So it's here, and it's this mysterious, like weird thing that keeps evolving so quick.
No.
That possibly that discipline of that nighttime kind of ritual, which is a tough discipline for so many people. Like
it is so tough.
Could help us in having a bit more discernment as the technology keeps evolving wherever it's going. It seems quite crucial, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And no one's doing it. So we're in the minority there.
And even the phone right next to the sex organs. Like,
oh my God.
Even like people that really know, it's one thing to have no idea, which some people just may not have any idea, but so many people that know.
Every
right
guy.
there, right next to that testicle.
Guy.
Right there.
We're lucky as women at least that we sort of, we don't, I mean, some girls do put it down their top, which is terrible. But for men particularly, every guy I know puts his phone into his pocket. And
if I got to put it in my pocket, I make sure it's the butt pocket.
Yeah, the butt pocket. Yeah. That's where it needs to go.
And I've got, I don't know if they do anything, the shield things on them and anything that'll help silver.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing it, whether we know or not.
Because it's strong, like 4G into 5G. These are strong radiations that we're completely new to. So I think it's worth taking those precautions.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good that you've got these guys on cords.
Yeah. I do use the cordless ones every now and then, but I try to limit it. Like they're convenient.
I know they really are. Like trying to work out with the cord attached to your phone. I've been trying to transition back to the corded, and because actually I started to feel that I got a sore ear. Yeah, I've got the Beats, you know, the Beats Bluetooth. And now every time if I wear them for too long, I get a weird pain in my ear, which is not good.
Not good. So it's interesting, like how we familiarize with this new technology. Because I was heavily against like having Bluetooth things in my ears. Yeah, heavily against.
Oh, like the pods and stuff. Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I've got them.
Yeah.
And I'm aware of it. Yeah. So it's very interesting.
It is.
How like I did the same thing with the smartphones. Like I was even resistant of like, I'm not going to do the smartphone thing. Like I'm just going to stay old school. Like I don't need all this shit. And then
here you are.
Everyone's got it.
Yeah. And now like your business relies on it. It's like they've got you hook, line and sinker.
So that seems to be a reoccurring contemplation of the future when these Neuralink things are happening and
oh my gosh,
shit's in our body. It's not even external anymore.
Yeah,
that gets normalized.
Totally.
People seem to be more intelligent because that's the thing is all the information we have readily available is external to us right now. Yeah, very close and always there.
Totally.
But this technology will make it one thought away.
Yes.
It'll make it like a new brain lobe. So if 90% of the population is functioning on that level, it's like, oh shit, it's normal. Like, do we keep up? It trips me out to contemplate.
Me too.
It's worth exercising these boundaries in preparation, I think.
Totally. Yeah. But this sort of stuff makes me feel like I want to go off grid.
Yeah.
You know, like these conversations, and I think a lot of people feel that.
Yeah, well, that's one of the inspirations of doing things like flow and like just even 2-3 days of getting out in the bush.
Yeah,
no technology.
Yes,
maybe not even much Wi-Fi connection. Holy shit!
Yeah, I know.
And you see, the first day people are very uneasy.
Yeah,
or typically, there's kind of anxiety, agitated.
Yeah.
A lot of people are unable to get directions without the GPS.
Oh, yes.
And then nervous system just relaxes. That
Yes.
parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and
Yes.
this beauty unfolds. And it just feels really crucial to get off the grid at least every now and then, huh?
Yeah,
Because I crave it as
totally.
well.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything else you want to bring to the table,
Don't
literally,
think
but
so.
conversationally?
Don't think so. Nothing that's popping. I feel like we've like dived around
big.
and
It's been-
had a lot of different, pivoted a lot, and it's been
Yeah.
awesome.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, so
Where can
good.
people get in touch with you?
Yes. So I obviously do face-to-face. I've got a home office, so I do face-to-face coaching, and I also do FaceTime or Skype, usually FaceTime with people all over the world. Probably my website, I suppose, would be one good starting point, and that's health-wellbeing.com.au. And then on Instagram, which also has like all the links to all of the different places, including my podcast with my darling friend Amanda, which
I
covers.
love. You got to check it out. It's really beautiful.
we
And
love it.
shorter than this as well.
Short
Each
and
episode is much
sweet.
more concise and to the point. So
Yeah.
dive
And we
into
cover
that.
all of these sorts of topics in there in little like half an hour segments. So my Instagram handle is at Hopkins Health. So anyone that's got kids might know Hopkins, but at Hopkins Health.
Cool. I'll
Yeah.
leave links below. Check it out. But thank you so much,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
Great to
It's
chat.
been a
and
joy.
Have a beautiful weekend.
You too.
Yeah, thank you.